CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe was at Terry McAuliffe's campaign headquarters in Virginia last night, back at his post there at the White House joining us. So Ed, good to talk to you again. We talked a lot last night about how in Virginia these exit polls were really giving us a bit of a clearer picture on what people in Virginia were thinking. We've had a little bit of time to digest those polls a bit more. What stands out to you, Ed?
That they, well, a few things. For one, there is clear rejection of what Democrats have been up to on this side of the Potomac River, and that is, of course, struggling to get the president's agenda passed. You've heard Virginia Democrats today telling their colleagues, we told you so, we warned you that this could happen if the bipartisan infrastructure bill wasn't passed, if the massive Build Back Better legislation wasn't passed before this election. And Tim Kaine, among others, saying that we really sort of stuck it to Terry McAuliffe by not getting our work done. And then to hear some Democrats who are on the bubble next year, are up for re-election, senators especially, in states similar to New Jersey and Virginia, you know, Democratic, but got a healthy chunk of independents as well, saying, I'm worried, we got to get this done. We don't have much time. We have to prove to people that we are trying to help them. There also, of course, the fact that Youngkin was able to produce a coalition that did well in the suburbs and rural areas, that ate into Democratic advantages with women, with younger voters, and with minorities. And on that last point, another sign of a Republican eating into Democratic Party advantages because of economic issues. So, you know, plenty of warning signs for the party as they struggle to sort out how exactly to pass the president's legislation and then begin selling it and explaining it to the American people.
So on that point, every corner of the state of Virginia supported Glenn Youngkin more strongly than they did former President Trump in 2020. What does that tell both parties about the midterms in Virginia and around the country?
Well, we'll see. I mean, Virginia is not entirely Georgia or North Carolina, Arizona, Wisconsin, New Hampshire, places in Nevada that are going to hold competitive statewide races next year. But what this signals is that they may enjoy some of what Republicans are trying to sell. Given that Democrats haven't been able to do much on their own, at least not much of what's been promised by this president and congressional Democrats. You know, and the other thing that I think a lot of Republicans in those kinds of states are going to be looking at is how Glenn Youngkin won this and expanded the Republican coalition compared to the last statewide race by keeping former President Trump at arm's length and almost not making him a factor at all. Former president put out a statement this morning saying that Glenn Youngkin wouldn't have happened without Donald Trump. I don't think there are Republicans in Virginia that would entirely agree with that. You know, he made clear, despite accepting the endorsement by saying he appreciated it and that he had voted for the president, former president last year, and in the primary campaign saying that election integrity was a top issue of concern in the state, which Democrats refuted, was then, during the general election, able to essentially change the subject and keep the former president out of the state and from becoming a topic of conversation until literally the 11th hour, when he did a telephone town hall that Youngkin refused to participate in. So I think the signal there is, if you are a compelling enough candidate who can build a coalition of voters across your state by talking about issues of statewide concern and keep the former president, you know, at arm's length, or at least acknowledge his past existence in politics, that might be enough. And I think if you're one of those Republicans who struggles this, you know, on a regular basis with how to talk about and engage with the former president, Youngkin may have given a signal of how it can be done.
Well, finally, Ed, Virginia also elected its first black woman lieutenant governor. Winsome Sears is a pro-Trump Marine, and here's some of her acceptance speech.
What you are looking at is the American dream. I didn't run to make history. I just wanted to leave it better than I found it.
So the Virginia House of Delegates also flipped red. Ed, what do these changes mean for the state in the coming years?
It's a good question. Certainly by regaining control of at least one of their legislative chambers, it's going to mean a far different approach to legislating in the state, and probably, you know, with a Republican governor, going to make it easier for GOP-friendly policies to get passed. But the Democrats still narrowly control the state Senate, which would be up again in 2 years. If anything, it's a reminder to Democrats across the country that your down-ballot races matter as well. And a word about Winsome Sears. First woman elected lieutenant governor in the state of Virginia, first woman elected statewide, that she is a black woman and a Republican in the state that once served as the seat of the Confederacy, I think is a notable bit of history and a sign that Republicans were able to build a multiracial, multiracial coalition with men and women on the ticket and pull it off, and do that, against recent state history. Glenn Youngkin lifted all boats last night, and it led to some interesting history there in Virginia state political history.
No, absolutely notable, especially at a time when we know that there is more awareness than ever of people's sort of lived experiences and what it is that they bring when they come to elected office. Ed O'Keefe from the White House for us. Ed, thank you very much.
Take care.